and welcome back to this channel. This is a video that I've been really excited about making. I'm gonna introduce you a little bit to my small town and New York City by comparing them. Ever since I've come back, I've wanted to bring a little bit of New York here, most specifically the baking, but that's neither here nor there. I'm gonna compare things like common trees and population, rent costs, and airports. And then I'm also going to talk about the Balto statue. Those are my main points. Let's face it, not everyone who might want to live in New York or who would find it like a good career thing, I mean, it seems like a good place for acupuncturists to live, might not feel like they would want to actually try that venture. So one of my ideas that's really exciting, that's a little off topic, but is to start a gluten-free French bakery. And I spoke with the Small Business Development Center this morning about that. So it may or may not pan out. I'm not really sure, but gluten-free French pastries are delicious. Check them out on the Upper East Side next time you're in Manhattan, in the French area. So let's get right into it. I've been researching these trees for probably 2 or 3 months. So like the entire winter, I've been researching trees. The 10 most common street trees in New York. So the first one is called the London plane tree. And we thought that this was eucalyptus the whole time we were there. So I used to live in San Diego, and I believe that there's a lot of eucalyptus trees around. And if you're anything like me, you're not a tree expert, and you maybe gone through life thinking, these are amazing trees, but I don't really know what they are. And you ask your friends or in your family, like, what's that tree? I don't know. And you all kind of go around and round. And even my husband, he basically went to school for botany and he doesn't always know. So we went around thinking that the London plane tree was a eucalyptus tree because it has the exfoliating bark. So it kind of looks like it's been painted on. It has the little speckles. So what that is, the exfoliating bark is good for urban environments because it's like a snake shedding its skin. It's able to get rid of the pollution toxins. The other cool thing about the London plane tree is that it was actually made, or I guess you should say bred, by crossing the Oriental plane tree with the American sycamore, and that was by the botanist Don Trudacent in the 1660s. So after the Great Fire in London, they needed to plant a tree that would be able to withstand further fires. And so I'm going to go further into that. I never even really had heard of the Great Fire of London, but it was apparently inside the old Greek wall, and that sounds terrifying. And it started in a bakery on Pudding Street. Is this foresight that I shouldn't start a bakery? The London plane tree is not native, obviously. If you want more details, go look it up. I think that it's smaller than the American sycamore. There's, of course, going to be tons more information about all these trees. I just kind of picked out the stuff that was really interesting and stood out to me. Coming in second place is the Norway maple. The Norway maple is related, of course, to the sugar maple, but it only has about 60% of the sugar that the sugar maple has. Also, they're different in lots of different ways. So they have shallower roots, which means that they'll grow faster, but it also means that they'll blow down faster, that they're not as able to withstand the wind. They live less than 100 years, which is less than a sugar maple. So they're invasive and not a great tree overall because they'll crowd out the other, native maples and other trees because it grows so fast and it has the shallow roots. So a native sugar maple has really, really deep roots. So deep roots will make more room. Less surface area covered by other roots makes more room for other trees. So it's not a great tree to grow unless you plant the King Crimson variety, because supposedly that one gets really big, lives a long time, and it is sterile. Number 3 is the Callery pear. I don't remember seeing this one around. It probably just would have looked like a simple tree to me. In the springtime, the flowers bloom at the same time as the leaves. So it's become a really popular ornamental tree for that reason, because it's like, oh, pretty flowers. They kind of remind me of cherry blossom, except that they're white. Of course, they're not cherry blossom. Let's not go there. Cherry blossoms are amazing, I believe, as far as I know. So the calorie pears are planted a lot by contractors. Like they'll, build a whole new construction subdivision, and they'll plant a bunch of calorie pears because they're pretty. But the downside to that, other than that they're an invasive, terrible tree, is that they smell terrible. So if you live in a subdivision with a bunch of calorie pear trees and they're all in bloom, it's going to be, I guess, an icky smell. Other thing is that if it does produce little pears, I guess kind of like the pears from the oriental pears. I'm not sure if I'm getting that right, but they have really low nutrient content. So of course, it is food for birds and small animals, but they say that it's just basically sugar. So it's not a great tree in any way, shape, or form to be planting in America. So what can be confusing about the calorie pear, okay, is that when it's sold as an Asian pear, it's sterile. But when it's combined with a Bradford pear, now it will reproduce rapidly. The honey locust is an interesting tree. And no, we're not talking about the locusts and honey that, was it John or Jesus ate in the
John
desert.
the Baptist.
We're talking about a tree, the honey locust tree. And if you watch YouTube or research, there's some homesteaders that are planting honey locusts on their homestead in America and talking about how you can make flour out of the bean pods. So it is in the Fabaceae family, also known as a pulse. So these are beans. And it's said that the honey locust, I don't know if you call it fruit, inside of the pod actually tastes like honey. So it sounds pleasant. You can make flour out of it. You can eat it. If you're looking for a food source, it's also a nitrogen fixer. So if you watch and learn about America, I think that it's considered a good tree. But I think that you want to plant the thornless, because that could become a problem. I don't know about in the US, but what I was reading was that like in Australia, it's a big problem. It pops tires on the road. It is a hazard for animals. It creates these like thickets that you can't get into that get all icky with rodents. So it sounds like they're a really big problem in Australia, and you would never recommend somebody grow these. They're very invasive there as well. I didn't hear anything about them being an invasive problem here, maybe with the climate. So kind of a mixed bag with the honey locust. We can like them or not like them, but either way, they are non-native, and I'm sure they're really easy to see. Their pods, I can just imagine, are probably all over the sidewalk. The pin oak is the first native tree that we've come across, and pin oak are through the Northeast and the Midwest. It doesn't make good firewood because it's a self-pruning tree, so it has like lots of knots and twists and turns. Did I say it doesn't make good firewood? What I meant was it does make good firewood, and it does not make good lumber. Pin oak make important homes for butterflies and birds. And of course, the acorns have a really great high protein and carb content for the squirrels and birds, the lovely little squirrels in Central Park that we met. The green ash is native. Yay! I don't really have much to say about that other than there's the green emerald ash borer insect. It's an important home for the insect, and it's native, so native insect, native tree. Super important, but I don't really know a lot about the ash tree, although I do feel like it's one of the only ones in this lineup that I could probably pick out because ash trees have a very distinctive look to them.
Coming in at number 7 is the little leaf linden. This is native to Asia and Europe. It grows relatively fast. The cool thing about it is its flowers bloom later, and it also loses its leaves later, so it will last longer in the summer. It shouldn't be planted around where Japanese beetles are. It's sensitive to road salt. Because it has little leaves, it makes a good tree for bonsai propagation. It has a nut-like fruit and yellow flowers.
Number 8 is the red maple. This one gets a really big applause because it's also native. And what you might not know, one of my favorite trivia bits that I've been rolling around in my mind is that Times Square used to be a red maple swamp. So red maples can exist in any pH. They're very hardy, and I just think that's so cool because Times Square now is like, it's a very mixed bag, right? It's got all the good, all the bad. It's got all the, like, you know, it's got Broadway and Disney now, but it used to be like quite a seedy area. Number 9, another maple, the silver maple, and this is the most commonly cultivated maple. Native, did I already say that? And it is, you got to be careful. It has an invasive root tip, so that doesn't mean that it's invasive, like it's going to take over or it's bad. It just means don't plant it too close to your house or it will like break your foundation. Number 10 is ginkgo. So somewhere in China, there is a ginkgo tree that's supposedly over thousands of years old. They supposedly live forever. So I know ginkgo from my background in herbal medicine as an adaptogen. An adaptogen is the type of herb like that you take over a long period of time, and it cumulatively helps build up the desired effect for that said herb. So another, well-known adaptogen is ginseng. There were so many ginkgo trees around New York, and they were in their golden phase. There's several different varieties of ginkgo, which I did not know. Well, there you have it. All of the trees, ending with a beautiful golden herbal one. Not native, of course. Ginkgo is not native. So now let's move on. We're going to talk about trees in Alaska are a whole different thing. And having grown up here, I always think it's weird to be in other places where the trees are different and non-native. So coastal hemlock at 60%, Sitka spruce at 30%, and softwoods as the other. That's on the coast. And what I read on the internet as far as what we have interior where I live, white spruce 64%, birch 21%, and the rest is poplars. But if you ask me, there's not very many white spruce around. There's actually a lot of black spruce, which are really susceptible to spruce beetle kill and then wildfires. So that's why we have a lot of wildfires out here, unfortunately. And they're not really the prettiest trees because a lot of times they're subject to bogs and permafrost, so they don't really get very big. The Alaskan black spruce landscape is unmistakable. My litmus test for if a movie that they say is filmed in Alaska was really filmed in Alaska or not is just look at the trees. If they're really big and bushy and majestic, probably not in Alaska, maybe somewhere southeast. If they're small and little and they all look exactly the same, like in the movie Into the Wild, then that's definitely Alaska. Of course, there are a lot of non-native trees that you can grow here. I actually saw an oak tree growing in the cemetery. Mind you, it was about that big. It was a little tiny baby. I think that you can grow, there's lots of ash trees and also maple trees, different types of maple trees. I'm not sure about ginkgo, and I wouldn't want to really grow any of the other ones on that list except maybe like linden plane tree. I doubt that grows here because it's like, it seems like more of a tropical or warmer place tree. So moving on to dogs. I was inspired actually to make this video because of the Balto statue in Central Park. We also have a Balto statue in Wasilla. Oh my gosh, and we also actually have Togo in Wasilla, but I'll get into that later. Well, Balto and Togo were both dogs belonging to the musher Leonard Seppälä. He was Swedish and he moved to Alaska in 1900. He became a naturalized citizen in 1909. He fell in love with dog mushing, how it feels like you're just gliding. At first he moved to Nome to work for his friend's gold mining company. And then he started being like a delivery driver with the dog sleds. And he was known for being able to do really, really treacherous journeys. So that's where he comes into the 1925 diphtheria serum run to Nome. And also the fact that he lived there and had a daughter there, and he was really concerned about his own daughter and diphtheria. So the population in Nome had not been exposed to that, so they didn't have any immunity. And getting the serum there obviously became a big priority at the time. The weather was really bad. Otherwise, I think that they would have flown it there in a plane. So the way that they got it there is they took it by railroad to Nenana, Alaska. And from Nenana, they ran it relay. Like they had different racers meeting in a middle checkpoint, or a point in the middle. And then, so that went back and forth. That's how they got it there. They chose Leonard Seppälä and his lead dog Togo for the most treacherous part of the journey. They had to cross the Norton Sound, and that was icy and likely to break. For a less experienced musher, probably wouldn't have made it. They had to endure 80-degree or negative with the wind chill temperatures, and of course it was hard on the dogs. They were along the cliffs. They had to be careful not to go over cliffs, and there were blizzard conditions and gale force winds. And it's kind of synonymous with his life before the diphtheria run. He had done these types of things before. Well, the reason that Balto was not with Seppälä, I think, may have had to do with that he wasn't that caliber of a dog. He was, I think it said, like a scrub dog on Wikipedia. He wasn't a lead dog for important journeys. But Balto was loaned to Leonard Seppälä's friend, and he ran the different leg of the journey, which is the one that they finished, right? So Leonard Seppälä and his team were doing their thing. They left Nome to go meet with the other musher that has the serum. And while he was on his journey, he was doing a good job. He was making good time, but he wasn't behind schedule at all. But diphtheria was getting worse in Nome. So to expedite things, they sent more mushers, and they sent somebody that was supposed to intercept him like 100 miles closer to Nome. And this guy was on the trail fixing attending to his dogs, and Seppälä blew right past him. He wasn't going to stop. He was so determined to keep going. And he's yelling at him, I have the serum, I have the serum. And he's just like, see you later, buddy. So, I mean, that kind of gives you an idea of how fast and good he was with his dog sleds. Not that it was good that he didn't stop. So he ended up having to endure like 100 miles to, more to get to the place and the person that he was intending to meet with. And in some ways that sounds like the worst part of his journey could have been avoided, and it could have got to Nome faster. So he ended up having to stop and sleep a bit, and then with sleep deprived dogs had to go like 80 miles uphill. Finally, he got it to the right person. It made it to Nome the next day with his friend Kaysen, Robert Kaysen, I believe it was, and Balto finished the race the next day. Or actually it may have been Fox. There's some controversy that Balto, having like a better media sounding name than Fox, maybe actually wasn't even one of two lead dogs, that he wasn't, I'm not sure how it went, but they recorded, they did a reenactment the next day. And so whether Balto was the leader or not is a big controversy. And sometimes it's also said that he was the lead dog, when I think most people who know anything about dog mushing know that there's often like two dogs, especially, it's two dogs the whole way from the front to the back. And that's the way, I think it's most effective. After the 1925 serum run was completed, Balto, being a celebrity, was relegated to the vaudeville circus, and he was eventually put in a show. And he was eventually rescued by a Cincinnati firefighter who saw him in these terrible conditions. He was malnourished and not being taken care of. And so that's really sad for poor Balto. Completely not at all what you should do to a hero dog or any dog, right? And he took him to the Cincinnati Zoo, where he lived out the rest of his life until he was 13. And then he was mounted by a taxidermist, and his mount was kept there. until about 1996. He came to Alaska for a visit, and then in 2017 he came to Alaska for a visit again to our museum, and now Balto resides back in Cincinnati. But I think the cool twist in this story is, even though Alaska is probably, well, I know they fought to get Balto, Alaska has Togo, and is Togo not like, I mean, he's like the real champion, like, you know, right?
Look, it is about Balto, see? Let's go see what it says. This is the Balto Seppala Park. We were doing something in Anchorage and I saw this on the thing. So Balto Seppala Park. What makes a good sled dog? Physical characteristics. All dogs in a team should be matched in size and gait. No overly aggressive towards other dogs. Special arrangement of blood vessels in the legs to counter frostbite. Wow, an efficient gait that doesn't use a lot of energy. Willingness to eat whenever it's given. Bushy tail to protect the nose when the dog is curled up on the snow. Wow, Martin Boozer. A good sled dog is a lot like a good person. Honest, hardworking, friendly, with a positive attitude, and curious. Lead dogs show signs of being leaders. From puppyhood, they're usually very curious and spunky. As they get older, they show that they like to be in charge and can learn the commands very quickly. Mitch Seavey. It's mostly attitude. The dogs have to be committed and dedicated workers. They need a combination of speed, strength, and attitude. Gary Paulson. Leaders kind of select themselves. A true leader just goes to work. Most dogs don't want to lead. They will hesitate. The ones who want to lead just go for it. They are hard chargers. So, the Iditarod just ended a couple of days ago, right?
Yeah, and we couldn't go to it.
No.
Huh. That looks sled dog.
Yeah,
Sort
it
of.
does.
Looks like Balto.
Mm-hmm. There's a library, a free library. It's a little free library in the snow.
Cute. Nod would probably like this, right? Ooh.
Whoa, careful. Don't slide down there and bonk in that. We actually have that book, or we used to.
Ooh.
Careful. Maybe not go down there, it's slippery.
Yeah, don't come near that. Not near it. Okay, now you're not near it.
Okay, I'm not
Let's go back to the park. Look at this.
It's pretty high up there. You got a view of Anchorage. No.
Very high. I can't see the top of it. Watch me weave through it.
Hey.
That's fun. Tiny parks. I want to be in a bigger park. That is fun.
What? Oh, just that? Okay.
That's not. That's good for a little kid.
Time of year that the snow is all nice and slippery.
Hard. The harder it looks.
This is a picnic table. Look, it's been buried. So much snow we got this year. I'm going to check out this plaque in the woods over there. This path has not been traversed except by skis, so I'm having a hard time getting over here. Balto Seppala Park. Oh, I sunk again. Oh, okay. There's some moose droppings. Okay. Ah! More moose droppings. A little bit mystical over here in the forest. And so, okay, let's see here. Balto Seppala Park, the most famous serum run dogs, Balto and Togo Seppala. I'm not going to go read that. I don't want to disturb this untainted snow. Coming out of the trees, I see we have pussy willows already. Look, they're there. They're happening. Ready to go?
We're gonna go tell Mom that it's fun and we're gonna stay a little longer.
I don't know about that. She probably doesn't want to.
Well, then I'm gonna go on the swing.
Swing, where's swings?
Way over there. I noticed them a little bit.
Okay.
So when I got down to the spot, I was gonna sit there and think about my thoughts.
As I continue walking in this beautiful birch forest, you find more and more plaques. I'm gonna go check out this one over here. Balto Seppala Park. What do you need to run the Iditarod? Required gear. You need survival gear, sled gear, dog gear, head gear, upper body, hand gear, lower body, foot gear. I always asked my dad why he didn't do the Iditarod because he did the Iditasport, and what he said was that it's incredibly expensive and time consuming to run the Iditarod. You need either exorbitant amounts of money that you just have, or else you need sponsorship. So he stuck with the Iditarod. Meant to say the Iditasport. Which is much more affordable and takes, I think, more manpower, less dog power. This video concept started out as one long video where I compared all of the things between New York City and South Central Alaska, but it's turning out to be two. So in the next one, you'll see everything else. See you there.